Hey there, tonight we're going back, way back, to a time they conveniently forgot to mention in your history textbooks. You know how Rome gets all the credit for aqueducts and plumbing? Well, plot twist. While Roman engineers were still sketching their first water channels, you were already bathing in heated water that flowed through terracotta pipes in a temple complex so sophisticated it would make modern architects weep. This isn't some vague legend. This is about you. A temple hydraulic engineer in the Mauryan Empire, around 300 BCE. You didn't just pray at temples, you built the impossible. You carved channels through solid granite, you calculated water pressure before calculus existed. And when war came, you fought to protect secrets that would be lost for 2,000 years. Tonight, you'll experience the daily grind of ancient engineering genius, the politics of temple construction, and the brutal reality of defending knowledge in a world where empires rose and fell over water rights. So, dim the lights, get comfortable, and let me take you to a place where running water was sacred, where mathematics was prayer, and where your hands built miracles they'd forget to write about. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. Someone's always awake somewhere. So, dim the lights. Let's begin. You wake before dawn in your small stone chamber adjacent to the temple complex. The air is cool, almost cold, and you can hear the constant whispering of water flowing through channels beneath your floor. This sound has been your lullaby and your alarm for 7 years now. Your name is Devadatta, and you are 24 years old, though your hands look older, calloused, and stained with red clay and limestone dust. You're not a priest, not a warrior, not a merchant. You're something rarer, a Jalayantrika, a water engineer, one of maybe 30 in the entire Mauryan Empire who understands the sacred mathematics of flow and pressure. Your chamber is sparse: a woven mat, a clay oil lamp, a wooden chest containing your tools, copper measuring rods, a plumb line, wax tablets for calculations, and a small bronze statue of Vishvakarman, the divine architect. You dress quickly in a simple dhoti, wrapping the cotton around your waist with practiced efficiency. Your upper body remains bare, as it must during physical work in the humid pre-monsoon heat. Today is important. The temple's head priest, Agni Mitra, has summoned you to inspect the new fountain installation in the western courtyard. 6 months of work, 40 labourers, 300 feet of carefully calibrated terracotta pipe. And yesterday, it failed. Water pooled instead of spraying. The symbolic lotus meant to float atop the jet sat sad and soggy in a puddle. You splash water on your face from the small basin fed by the temple's system. Even this simple morning ritual connects you to something larger. Every drop that touches your skin has travelled through your designs, your calculations made real in stone and clay. The water is always cool, always clean, filtered through layers of sand and gravel, you personally positioned in the settling tanks 3 levels above. You step out into the temple complex as the first grey light softens the darkness. The main structure towers above you, a massive pyramid of granite blocks, each weighing more than 20 men combined. But you don't see it as pilgrims do. You see the invisible network of channels carved into those blocks, the mathematical precision that makes water defy its nature and climb upward through capillary action and pressure differentials you can calculate, but still marvel at. The morning air carries the smell of incense, jasmine, and wet stone. Temple servants are already moving through the compound, lighting oil lamps, sweeping courtyards with palm fronds, preparing for the day's rituals. They nod to you with respect. They know you're not holy in the traditional sense, but your work keeps the sacred waters flowing, which makes you holy enough. You walk past the main bathing tank, a rectangular pool 40 feet long and 20 wide. Fed by underground channels, that keep the water in constant, gentle circulation. Pilgrims believe the water possesses healing properties. You know it's just exceptionally clean because of your 3-stage filtration system and the fact that the water never stays still long enough for harmful miasmas to develop. Same result, different explanations. Your destination is the western courtyard, where yesterday's failure occurred. As you walk, you mentally review the calculations you made 6 months ago. The fountain's water source is a storage tank on the temple's 3rd level, approximately 45 feet above the courtyard. Gravity provides pressure. The terracotta pipes, each 3 feet long and 6 inches in diameter, should deliver water with sufficient force to create a spray pattern 5 feet high. Should, but didn't. The courtyard is empty when you arrive. The failed fountain sits in the center, a circular stone basin 8 feet across with a central copper nozzle meant to shoot water upward. Instead, the basin is half full of standing water, and the nozzle pathetically. You kneel beside it, running your hand along the stone edge, feeling for cracks or irregularities. Nothing obvious. The problem is hidden. Somewhere in those 300 feet, you need to trace the entire pipe system, which means climbing. The storage tank is on the 3rd level of the temple's northern wing, accessible only by narrow maintenance corridors that most priests don't even know exist. These passages are your domain, carved specifically for water engineers to access, inspect, and repair the hydraulic network that gives this temple its reputation across the empire. You enter through a small wooden door set low in the temple's exterior wall. The door is unmarked, unremarkable, and most visitors walk past it daily without noticing. Inside, a steep stone staircase spirals upward in near total darkness. You've climbed these steps so many times your feet know every uneven surface, every place where moisture makes the stones slippery. You carry no lamp. Fire and confined spaces filled with occasionally explosive methane gas from stagnant water don't mix well. You learned that the hard way, watching another Jalayantrika die screaming when his oil lamp ignited pocket gas in a sealed chamber. You were 17. The memory keeps you cautious. The staircase opens onto the 1st maintenance level, a narrow corridor running parallel to the main temple wall. Here, the terracotta pipes are exposed, running along channels carved into the stone. You can see them, touch them, trace their path with your hands. This is where artistry becomes reality. Each pipe joint must be sealed with a mixture of lime plaster and ground seashells, creating watertight connections that can withstand decades of pressure and temperature changes. You run your hand along the pipes, feeling for temperature variations that might indicate a blockage or leak. The pipes should be cool but not cold, indicating steady water flow. You find the first irregularity 12 feet from the staircase entrance. A section of pipe feels warm, almost hot. That's wrong. That means water is sitting still, heating up in the humid air instead of flowing as it should. You mark the spot with a piece of chalk from your pouch, drawing a quick symbol that other engineers would recognize, a circle with a wave through it. Potential blockage. You'll need to come back with tools to open this section. But first, you want to check the storage tank itself to ensure the problem isn't at the source. The storage tank sits on the 3rd level in a chamber specifically designed for water management. When you finally reach it after 2 more flights of stairs and a crawl through a particularly narrow passage that always scrapes your shoulders, you emerge into a space that still fills you with professional pride. This tank is your masterwork, designed and built under your supervision 3 years ago, when the old system finally cracked beyond repair. The chamber is roughly square, 20 feet on each side, with a vaulted stone ceiling that rises 12 feet at its peak. The storage tank itself is carved directly into the temple's structure, a massive basin holding approximately 8,000 gallons when full. The water comes from an even higher source, a series of collection gutters on the temple's roof that gather rainwater and channel it down through filters. During the dry season, manual labor supplements the system, water carriers hauling leather bags up exterior stairs to pour into the collection system. Today, the tank is 3/4 full, which is normal for this time of year. The monsoon is still 6 weeks away, and yesterday's failed fountain test consumed about 300 gallons before you shut down the feed. The water surface is calm, reflecting the small amount of light that enters through ventilation holes in the ceiling. These holes are too small for a person, but large enough for air circulation, preventing the buildup of harmful vapors and keeping the water fresh. You kneel at the tank's edge and plunge your arm in up to the shoulder. The water is cool, clean, and more importantly, the level is correct. This means the problem isn't inadequate supply. You wade carefully into the tank, the water rising to your waist, and make your way to the outlet point where your fountain's feed pipe begins. This is the most critical junction in the entire system. A bronze valve mechanism that controls flow to multiple destinations throughout the temple. The valve is open, exactly as it should be. You work the lever back and forth, feeling for resistance or damage. Everything moves smoothly, which means the blockage is definitely in the pipe run between here and the fountain. 300 feet of buried pipe, and somewhere in that length, something is preventing proper flow. This is going to be a long day. By the time you emerge from the maintenance corridors, the sun has fully risen, and the temple complex buzzes with activity. Priests chant morning prayers in the main sanctum, their voices echoing through stone corridors in a rhythmic drone that's been continuous for 70 years, maintained by rotating shifts of devotees. Pilgrims queue at the bathing tanks, waiting their turn to descend the stone steps and immerse themselves in water they believe is blessed by the gods, but which you know is blessed by good engineering. You need your crew. Pipe excavation and repair isn't solo work. It requires diggers, carriers, someone to mix fresh lime plaster, and at least one other Jalayantrika to verify your diagnosis before you commit to tearing up a courtyard. That's protocol. 2 sets of calculations, 2 opinions. Water engineering errors can kill people if a sudden pressure release floods a chamber, or if contaminated water enters the drinking supply. Your crew consists of 5 regular workers, all of whom have been with you for at least 2 years. There's Rudra, your assistant engineer, a man 10 years your senior, who's never quite mastered the mathematics, but has an instinctive understanding of water behavior that sometimes surpasses your calculations. He's already waiting for you near the tool storage, having heard about yesterday's failure from the night shift. Rudra is shorter than you, broader, with arms like tree trunks from years of moving stone and wielding heavy hammers. His face is deeply lined, and he's missing his left thumb from an accident before you knew him. He greets you with a slight bow, more habit than hierarchy. You've never insisted on formal respect, and he's never quite been comfortable with casual familiarity. So you exist in a middle space of mutual professional regard. "The fountain?" he asks simply. His voice is rough, permanently damaged from years of breathing stone dust before someone figured out that wet cloths over the face helped. "Blockage in the main run," you confirm, "between the 3rd level feed and the courtyard terminus. We'll need to excavate." Excavation begins at the midpoint of the pipe run, where you've calculated the blockage is most likely located based on the temperature differential you felt earlier and the geometry of the system. The western courtyard is a public space, so working here means an audience. Pilgrims and priests pause to watch as your crew carefully removes stone paving blocks stacking them in order so they can be replaced exactly. The other 3 members of your crew arrive, 2 diggers named Soma and Kirti, brothers who specialize in precise excavation around fragile pipes, and a young apprentice named Megha, barely 15, who wants to become a Jalyantrika, but hasn't yet mastered the mathematical requirements. She's brilliant with her hands, though, and can mix lime plaster to perfect consistency by texture alone, a skill that took you years to develop. Soma and Kirti are identical twins, which still confuses you sometimes despite working with them for 3 years. They're 28, average height, with the lean, wiry builds of men who dig for a living. The only way you reliably tell them apart is that Soma has a scar across his right eyebrow from a childhood accident, and Kirti tends to whistle while he works, an unconscious habit he's unaware of. Megha is different from most apprentices. The one, she's female, which is unusual but not forbidden in technical castes. Her father was a Jalyantrika who died in a pipe collapse when she was 10, and she's been hanging around water engineers ever since, absorbing knowledge like a sponge absorbs spillage. She's small, barely 5 feet tall, with quick hands and quicker mind. She can't yet do the complex calculations required for major project design, but she's getting there. The excavation proceeds carefully. Soma and Kirti work in perfect synchronization, developed from a lifetime of shared labor. They remove dirt in precise scoops, examining each shovelful for artifacts, moisture, or any indication of pipe damage, before dumping it in the growing pile to the courtyard's side. Megha kneels nearby, preparing plaster mixture on a flat stone, grinding components with a pestle in ratios you've taught her. 2 feet down, Soma's shovel strikes something that isn't dirt. The metallic clink is distinctive. Everyone freezes. You motion for them to stop and kneel at the edge of the excavation yourself, brushing away loose soil with your hands. The curve of a terracotta pipe emerges, exactly where your calculations predicted it would be. But something's wrong. The pipe's surface is discolored, darkened in a way that suggests long-term moisture exposure outside the pipe interior. That means a leak. You trace the pipe's length with your fingers, feeling for the crack. It takes 3 minutes of careful examination before you find it. A hairline fracture, running lengthwise for nearly 6 inches, probably caused by ground settling or thermal expansion during the hot season. This is both good news and bad news. Good, because a leak is fixable. Bad, because this leak has been slowly seeping water into the soil, creating a moisture pocket that's caused the blockage. You need to see what's inside the pipe. Rudra hands you a small bronze saw without being asked. He's worked with you long enough to anticipate needs. You begin cutting through the terracotta pipe with careful, controlled strokes. The saw's teeth are fine, designed for precision rather than speed. Cutting too fast can cause the pipe to shatter, turning a simple repair into a complete section replacement that requires custom pipe fabrication, a process that takes weeks. The temple priests are already unhappy about yesterday's fountain failure. They don't need to hear that the repair will take a month. As the saw cuts through, water begins seeping out, but it's not the clean, rapid flow you expected. It's thick, dark, filled with sediment. When you finally remove a section of pipe, you see the problem. The leak allowed soil to enter the pipe interior, where it was carried along by water flow until it reached a junction point. There, it accumulated, creating a mass of mud and clay that eventually blocked approximately 80% of the pipe's diameter. The fountain failed because water couldn't flow through fast enough to create pressure. The repair takes 4 hours. First, you must flush the remaining sediment from both directions of the pipe, which requires opening access points at 2 other locations and using leather bladders filled with clean water to push the blockage material through. Mega volunteers to climb into the maintenance corridor to manage the upper access point, and you send Kirti with her because protocol requires 2 people in confined spaces in case of accident or toxic gas accumulation. While they work above, you, Rudra, and Soma handle the excavation site. The fractured pipe section must be completely removed and replaced. This means cutting out not just the damaged piece, but 2 additional sections on either side to ensure proper sealing at the joints. Each cut must be perfect, perpendicular to the pipe's axis, smooth enough that the joint will seal without gaps. Rudra mixes the special lime plaster you use for pipe repairs. The formula is proprietary to your guild, passed down through generations of water engineers, with slight modifications each time someone discovers an improvement. Your version includes ground seashells for strength, a small amount of jaggery to slow the setting time for better working properties, and fibers from coconut husks to prevent cracking during the curing process. It's mixed with water to a consistency that Rudra judges by feel, kneading the paste like dough until it reaches the exact texture that means it will seal perfectly and last for decades. While he works the plaster, you prepare the replacement pipe sections. These are kept in storage specifically for repairs, prefabricated sections in standard lengths with specially shaped ends designed for overlap joints. You select 3 sections that match the existing pipe's diameter and age. Using new pipes in an old system can create pressure differentials that cause problems elsewhere, so you always match materials as closely as possible. The actual replacement is surprisingly quick once all the preparation is complete. You slide the first new section into place, overlapping the existing pipe by 3 inches. Rudra applies plaster to the joint, working it into every gap with his fingers, then wrapping the whole connection with strips of wet cloth that will keep the plaster moist during curing. Second section, same process. Third section, same process. In 20 minutes, the pipe is whole again. But the repair isn't finished until the system is tested. You need to ensure the new pipe section can handle full pressure without leaking and that the blockage is completely cleared. This means filling the system, monitoring all joints, and running water through at maximum flow for at least 1 full hour. It's a tense process. A single mistake, a joint sealed imperfectly, and you'll be back in this pit tomorrow. Mega returns from the upper corridor, covered in soot and looking pleased with herself. She reports that the flushing operation cleared approximately 3 gallons of sediment from the system, which aligns with your calculations about how much material could have accumulated over the weeks the leak was developing. Kirti climbs down behind her, whistling a popular folk tune, apparently unconcerned with the cramped, dangerous work he just completed. You send Soma to the storage tank chamber with specific instructions. Open the valve feeding this line slowly, in stages, over a period of 10 minutes. This gradual pressurization prevents shock that could damage the fresh repairs. He nods and disappears into the maintenance entrance, climbing the stairs you descended hours ago. Rudra kneels beside the excavation, one hand resting on the wrapped pipe joints, feeling for vibration and temperature changes that would indicate problems. Mega positions herself at the fountain in the courtyard's center, ready to report when water flow resumes. Kirti stands halfway between the 2 positions, ready to relay messages. You remain at the excavation site, watching the pipe with an intensity that makes your eyes burn. The wait feels eternal. Then, gradually, you hear it, a soft rushing sound inside the pipe as water begins to flow. The sound increases, becoming a steady whisper, then a definite stream. Rudra's hand reports no abnormal vibration. The wrapped joints remain cool, meaning no heat from friction or pressure problems. The pipes carrying water properly. From across the courtyard, Mega's shout rings out. Flow! Clean flow. You allow yourself a small smile. The repair is holding. The fountain springs to life 30 seconds later. Water shoots upward from the copper nozzle in a perfect arc, reaching the designed height of 5 feet before falling back into the basin in a continuous, graceful spray. The symbolic lotus, placed carefully in the basin by a waiting priest, rises on the jet and floats exactly as intended, spinning slowly in the current. Pilgrims gathered in the courtyard break into spontaneous applause. You feel the tension drain from your shoulders. 6 months of work validated. Yesterday's failure corrected. The fountain operates perfectly, which means the entire hydraulic calculation was sound. The pipe fabrication was precise, and the installation was proper. The only problem was an unforeseeable hairline crack caused by ground conditions. That's not a design flaw. That's just reality. Stone and clay and earth all move, settle, shift. Water engineering is as much about planning for eventual maintenance as it is about initial construction. Agnimitra, the head priest, approaches. He's an old man, at least 60, with a shaved head and saffron robes that somehow remain pristine despite constant temple duties. His face is deeply lined, and he walks with a slight limp from an old injury. But his eyes are sharp and miss nothing. You've worked under his authority for 7 years, and he's never once questioned your technical decisions, which is rarer than you realize. Many priests view engineers as necessary servants, rather than skilled professionals. Devadatta, he says formally, using your name in acknowledgement. The fountain flows. As designed, Holy One, you reply, maintaining proper, respectful address. You're covered in mud and exhaustion, and he's immaculate in silk-fine cotton. But the interaction contains genuine mutual respect. The prince arrives in 14 days. Agnimitra continues, his voice dropping to a tone meant only for you. He comes to see our water systems. The emperor has asked for a report on provincial temple engineering. This fountain, the bathing tanks, the distribution network, everything must be perfect. Your exhaustion vanishes, replaced by cold alertness. A royal inspection. This changes everything. That night you don't sleep. Instead, you sit in your chamber with every wax tablet you own, calculating, checking, rechecking. A royal inspection isn't just a casual visit. Prince Ashoka, the emperor's son, is known for his interest in infrastructure and public works. The rumors say he's being groomed to govern the southern provinces, which means he's evaluating which temples and which systems deserve imperial funding for expansion. If your water system impresses him, this temple could receive resources to expand the network to the surrounding village, providing clean water to 3,000 people who currently rely on a single contaminated well. If your system fails during his visit, if a pipe bursts or a tank runs dry, or sediment clouds the bathing pools, the temple could lose imperial patronage entirely. The stakes are absolute. You create a list of every potential failure point in the system. The storage tank seals, the roof collection gutters, every pipe joint in the main distribution lines, the filtration sound layers, the settling tanks, the pressure release valves, the overflow drains, the bathing pool circulation, the drinking water outlets, the ceremonial washing fountains. Each item gets a rating. Stable, requires inspection, requires maintenance, or critical attention needed. By dawn, your list contains 47 items requiring at least basic inspection and 16 requiring immediate maintenance. You have 13 days, 14 if you count today, but today is already half gone after yesterday's fountain repair. 13 days to ensure that every drop of water in this temple complex flows flawlessly. Rudra finds you as the sun rises, still hunched over your tablets, eyes burning with exhaustion and lamplight. He takes one look at your face and knows something significant has changed. You explain about the prince, about the inspection, about what success or failure could mean. He listens without interruption, then simply nods. We'll need more workers, he says practically, and more supplies. The lime plaster alone, if we're sealing every questionable joint. I know, you interrupt. I'm requesting emergency funds from the temple treasury this morning. Agnimitra has already approved it. Then we begin immediately, Rudra says. It's not a question.
The next 13 days blur into continuous work. You divide your crew into 3 teams, each assigned to different sections of the temple's water system, with you rotating between all 3 to inspect work and make critical decisions. Agnimitra authorizes hiring 10 additional laborers, craftsmen from the village who've done temple maintenance before and can be trusted with sacred spaces. Day 1. You focus on the storage tank. The entire structure must be drained, which hasn't been done since its construction 3 years ago. This is delicate work. The temple's water supply must continue during draining, which means temporarily rerouting flow through backup systems and carefully managing reserves. You calculate that full draining will take 6 hours, with inspection and resealing taking another 8, and refilling taking 12. That's 26 hours minimum, more than a full day without the main storage tank operational. The draining reveals minor issues. Small deposits of sediment in the tank's corners, some algae growth where sunlight penetrates through the ventilation holes, and 3 joints showing early signs of lime plaster degradation. Nothing critical, but everything requiring attention. You and Mega spend hours inside the empty tank, scraping, cleaning, resealing. The work is claustrophobic and exhausting. The tank walls echo every sound. The curved stone floor makes standing difficult. The air is stale and humid, but when you finish, when the last joint is sealed and the last surface cleaned, the tank is perfect. Better than new, actually, because you've now corrected issues that would have worsened over the next decade. You stand in the center of the empty tank, looking up at the ventilation holes, where streams of sunlight pierce the darkness, and feel a moment of profound satisfaction. This structure will outlast you. It will serve people you'll never meet. That's worth every drop of sweat. By day 3, the tank is refilled and operational. Rudra's team has completed inspection and maintenance on all roof collection gutters, clearing accumulated leaves and bird nests, resealing 12 joints where seasonal thermal expansion had caused minor cracks. Soma and Kirti have mapped every exposed pipe section in the main distribution system, marking 17 locales. Day 5 brings the first serious problem. Soma, while inspecting a junction point in the underground distribution system, discovers something worse than deteriorating plaster. One of the main distribution pipes shows signs of structural damage, a long crack that's been slowly expanding. The pipe is 4 years old, which is far too young for this kind of failure. This suggests a fundamental problem. Either the pipe was improperly fired during manufacture, leaving internal weaknesses, or something external is putting pressure on the system that your original calculations didn't account for. You descend into the maintenance tunnel yourself to examine the damage. The crack runs nearly the entire length of a 3-foot pipe section, a jagged line that looks like lightning frozen in terracotta. You press your ear against the pipe and hear water flowing, but also something else, a subtle grinding sound that shouldn't exist. Something is moving against this pipe from outside, creating friction and pressure. Further investigation reveals the cause. A large tree root has penetrated the tunnel, growing through a gap in the stone wall and wrapping around the pipe section. Tree roots seek water with remarkable persistence, and this one has apparently been growing toward your pipe system for years, finally reaching it and then beginning to constrict around it like a slow-moving python. The root is as thick as your wrist and woody with age. You have to cut it. There's no choice. The root is destroying critical infrastructure, but cutting it will likely kill the tree above, which happens to be a sacred banyan growing in one of the temple's meditation courtyards. A tree that's been there for at least a century, maybe 2. Cutting it requires permission from not just Agnimitra, but the temple's council of senior priests,
who will not be pleased to hear that their ancient tree is threatening the water system. The council meeting is tense. You explain the situation with precise technical detail: the crack, the root, the grinding damage, the inevitable catastrophic pipe failure if nothing is done. You show them wax impressions of the crack. You describe the sound of water and root moving together. You're frank about the tree's probable death if the root is severed. The council debates for 2 hours. You stand there, waiting, as they discuss theology and practicality, sacred trees and necessary sacrifices, the balance between respecting nature and maintaining the temple's function. Finally, the eldest priest, a man named Yajna, who rarely speaks but whose word carries absolute weight, raises his hand for silence. "The tree has lived long," he says quietly. "It has provided shade and peace for many. But trees die. Water systems serve thousands. Cut the root. Perform the proper rituals for the tree's spirit. Plant 3 new saplings in consecrated ground. Life continues in new forms. Permission granted." You bow and leave quickly before anyone can reconsider. By sunset, you're back in the tunnel with Rudra and a sharp bronze saw, cutting through the thick root. The work is harder than expected. The wood is dense, almost stone-like with age, and your saw teeth keep binding. It takes nearly an hour to cut through completely. When the root finally separates, you hear a groaning sound above ground, the tree responding to its injury. With the root removed, you can properly assess and repair the damaged pipe. The crack is too extensive for plaster sealing. The entire section must be replaced. You work through the night, cutting out the damaged pipe, installing a new section, sealing joints with extra care because this location is now known to be vulnerable to external pressure. You wrap the new pipe in additional cloth soaked in tar, creating a protective layer that will discourage future root growth. By dawn, the repair is complete, and the system is back to full functionality. You emerge from the tunnel exhausted, covered in tar and root sap, and immediately check the banyan tree in the courtyard above. It still stands, but several of its lower branches have already begun to wilt. The tree will die, probably within weeks. You stand there for a long moment, looking at it, acknowledging the cost of your work. Engineering isn't just mathematics. It's choices. Days 6 through 9 pass in intensive inspection work. Every pipe section that's accessible gets examined. Every joint gets tested for integrity. The filtration systems get completely disassembled, cleaned, and rebuilt with fresh sand layers that you personally grade and approve. The bathing pools get drained one at a time, cleaned of years of accumulated body oils and offerings left by pilgrims, resealed and refilled with water so clean it's nearly invisible. Mega proves invaluable during this phase. Her small size allows her to squeeze into maintenance spaces that you and the other men can't reach, and her careful hands make her ideal for the delicate work of cleaning filtration screens without damaging the fine bronze mesh. She works with an intensity that reminds you of yourself 7 years ago, when you were the young apprentice desperate to prove your worth. On day 8, she brings you a problem she's discovered in one of the secondary drinking water outlets in the pilgrim housing area. The outlet's valve mechanism is corroded, probably from years of improper maintenance by untrained servants who used it roughly. The bronze has developed a green patina that's flaking into the water supply. Not enough to be dangerous, but enough to discolor the water and create an unpleasant metallic taste. "Can it be cleaned?" she asks, showing you the valve components she's carefully disassembled. You examine the pieces. The corrosion is extensive but surface level. It can, you tell her, but not by cleaning. The patina is too deeply embedded. We need to rebronze the surface. Do you know how? She shakes her head. Then I'll teach you. This is a critical skill that every Jalayantrika must master. You spend the next 3 hours teaching Mega the art of bronze restoration, heating the piece carefully over charcoal, applying a mixture of ground malachite and oil to draw out the corrosion, polishing with increasingly fine abrasives until the original bronze color returns, then sealing it with a protective wax coating that will resist future corrosion. She learns quickly, her hands adapting to the work with natural grace. By day 10, you're ahead of schedule. Every critical item on your inspection list has been addressed, and most of the secondary items as well. The water system is operating at peak efficiency, better than it has since initial construction. You allow yourself to hope that the royal inspection might actually go smoothly. Then, on the morning of day 11, a runner arrives from the village with news that changes everything. Prince Ashoka's arrival has been moved forward. He'll arrive tomorrow, not in 3 days as planned. You have less than 30 hours to prepare. The news triggers controlled chaos. You gather all your workers and create a new priority list. Only the most visible and critical elements now matter. The storage tank is perfect, so that's fine. The main fountain works flawlessly. The bathing pools are pristine. But dozens of minor cosmetic issues throughout the complex haven't been addressed yet, because they weren't urgent. Stained stone around drain outlets, algae growth on exterior walls where water occasionally splashes, sediment discoloration in some of the ornamental water features in the inner courtyards. You split your crew into 2 groups, one focused on technical readiness, ensuring that every system will operate flawlessly during demonstration, and one focused on cosmetic appearance, cleaning and polishing every visible water feature. You take the technical group, Rudra takes the cosmetic group. You have until sunset tomorrow. The work is exhausting. You personally test every valve in the system, opening and closing each one multiple times to ensure smooth operation. You check water flow rates at every outlet, comparing actual performance against your calculations. You climb to the roof collection system and ensure that the emergency demonstration you've planned, pouring water into the gutters to show how it flows through the entire system, will work perfectly. You inspect the ceremonial washing area, where the prince will likely perform ritual ablutions, ensuring that the water temperature, flow rate, and clarity are all optimal. By midnight, you're satisfied with the technical readiness. The system will perform flawlessly. Now you need to sleep for at least 4 hours before the final preparation push tomorrow. You wake 4 hours later to Rudra shaking your shoulder. Dawn is breaking. The prince arrives at noon. You have 6 hours for final preparations. Your body protests movement, every muscle aching from 13 days of constant physical labor. But you force yourself upright and begin the last push. Agni Mitra has organized the reception ceremony, which isn't your concern, but he needs your input on the demonstration sequence. The prince will want to see how the water system works, not just that it works. You've prepared a systematic tour. Start at the roof collection system, follow the water's path down through filtration, into storage, through distribution, and finally to the various outlets and features. The tour should take approximately 1 hour, enough time to show everything significant without becoming tedious. But there's a problem. One of the ornamental fountains in the main courtyard, a small decorative feature that wasn't on your critical list, has developed a leak overnight. Not a major failure, just a small seep at a joint, but it's creating a dark stain on the stone that looks terrible. You have 2 hours to fix it before the final pre-inspection check. You and Soma work at frantic speed, dig out the joint, clean the surfaces, apply plaster, seal, wait for partial curing, test. The work that should take 4 hours, you complete in 90 minutes through pure desperation and experience. The plaster isn't fully cured when you refill the line, which is against protocol, but you calculated that partial curing will be sufficient for the limited pressure of this decorative fountain. You're right. The leak stops. The stain is scrubbed away. By 10 o'clock, the temple is ready. Every water feature operates perfectly. Every surface is cleaned. Every valve is tested. You stand in the main courtyard with Rudra, Megha, Soma, and Kirti, all of you exhausted beyond anything you've experienced before, and survey your work. The temple's water system, all several thousand feet of pipe, all hundreds of joints and valves and outlets. Everything is perfect. Agnimitra approaches, looking at the complex with satisfaction. Good work, Devadatta. Very good work. Now go bathe and dress properly. The prince doesn't need to see you looking like... You bathe in one of the pilgrim bathing tanks, using your own water system, and the irony isn't lost on you. The water is perfect, cool, clean, filtered through the sand layers you personally installed, circulating constantly through the channels you designed. You scrub away 13 days of accumulated dirt, plaster, tar, and exhaustion, watching it all swirl away into the drainage system that carries wastewater to the agricultural fields outside the temple compound. Another aspect of the water network that people take for granted, but which required careful engineering. Clean, and dressed in your finest dhoti, a deep blue cotton that you reserve for formal occasions, you actually look like a professional engineer rather than a construction labourer. Megha insisted you wear your guild medallion, a bronze disc engraved with the symbol of your profession, a stylized water wave, and a measuring tool crossed. You rarely wear it, but today seems appropriate. The prince arrives exactly at noon, as royal personages do, everything in their world running on precise timing, maintained by servants and officials. His procession enters through the temple's main gate. Soldiers first, then officials, then the prince himself in a covered palanquin carried by bearers, then more officials and servants. It's an impressive display of imperial power, but you're more interested in the prince himself. When Ashoka steps from his palanquin, your first impression is that he's younger than expected, perhaps 25, with a warrior's build and a scholar's eyes. He's dressed in fine cotton and silk, wearing jewelry appropriate to his rank, but not ostentatious, and carrying himself with the confidence of someone who knows he'll likely rule an empire someday. More importantly, he's carrying a wax tablet and stylus, which suggests he actually intends to take notes. This might not be a ceremonial visit. Agnimitra performs the formal welcomes, the ritual offerings, the ceremonial words that sound impressive but mean little. You stand with other temple officials, waiting for your part of the proceedings. Finally, Agnimitra introduces you. Your Highness, this is Devadatta, our chief water engineer, who will demonstrate the temple's hydraulic systems. The prince looks at you directly. 17, Your Highness, you answer honestly. Though I was working under the supervision of the previous chief engineer, who approved all major decisions. And when did you become chief engineer? When I was 19, Your Highness, after my predecessor died in a pipe collapse during expansion work. Ashoka makes a note on his tablet. Show me how the system works. Start at the beginning. Assume I know nothing about water engineering, which isn't far from truth. You lead him to the roof access, climbing narrow stairs with the prince, Agnimitra, 2 royal officials, and 3 guards following. The roof is hot under the midday sun, and you see one of the officials already sweating uncomfortably. You show the prince the collection system. Gutters carved directly into the stone, sloping at precise angles to direct rainwater into downspouts that feed into the filtration system. During monsoon, you explain. This roof collects approximately 12,000 gallons per hour during heavy rain. The gutters channel everything to these downspouts, which are sized to handle maximum flow without overflow. And during dry season? Ashoka asks. Manual labor, Your Highness. Water carriers bring approximately 2,000 gallons per day up the exterior stairs, pouring into these collection points. You indicate several stone basins set into the roof surface. That's inefficient, the prince observes. It is, you agree. I've proposed installing a mechanical lifting system using counterweights and pulleys, reducing labor requirements by approximately 60%. The proposal was rejected due to cost. Ashoka makes another note. You notice that Agnimitra looks slightly uncomfortable with your frank admission of system limitations. But the prince seems pleased with your honesty. You lead the group down to the filtration level, showing the 3-stage process you designed. Coarse gravel to catch large debris, medium sand to filter smaller particles, and fine sand to remove sediment. Water passes through each layer at a controlled rate, you explain. Too fast, and filtration is inadequate. Too slow, and the system can't handle peak demand. The layer depths and flow rates are calculated to optimal balance. The tour continues through the storage tank, which impresses the prince significantly. He enters the chamber and spends several minutes examining the carved walls, the sealed joints, the ventilation system. He runs his hand along the plasterwork, feeling the smooth surfaces, and asks about the lime mixture composition. You explain the formula, including your modifications from the traditional guild recipe. He writes everything down. This could hold the water supply for how many people? He asks. You calculate quickly. With proper rationing, approximately 2,000 people for 3 days, Your Highness. The current temple population is about 500, so it provides 6 days of reserve during drought. But the village beyond the temple walls has approximately 3,000 people, with access to only contaminated wells, Ashoka observes. If this system were extended, 8,000 gallons additional storage capacity would be required. You answer immediately, having done these calculations years ago for your proposal that was rejected. Approximately 2,000 feet of additional pipe, 4 more filtration stages, 3 additional distribution points. Total construction time, 18 months. Total cost, approximately 6,000 silver coins. The prince looks at you sharply. You've calculated this before? Yes, Your Highness. I proposed the expansion 4 years ago. The Temple Council determined that serving the village population wasn't within the temple's religious mandate. Agnimitra interrupts smoothly. The temple serves spiritual needs, Your Highness. Civil infrastructure is traditionally a provincial government responsibility. Traditionally, Ashoka agrees neutrally, making another note. You suspect that note says something about short-sighted religious institutions and missed opportunities for public welfare, but you keep your expression carefully blank. The demonstration continues through the distribution system, showing how pressure differentials ensure that water reaches even the lowest outlets with sufficient flow. You show him the pressure release valves that prevent pipe ruptures, the drainage system that recycles water to agricultural use, the separate drinking water network with additional filtration. The tour concludes in the main courtyard, where all the fountains operate at full capacity, specifically for this demonstration. Water sprays, flows, circulates, performs exactly as designed. The prince watches the lotus fountain you repaired 2 weeks ago, observing how the symbolic flower spins perfectly on the water jet. How long before this system requires major maintenance? Ashoka asks. The current system, with regular minor maintenance, should remain fully functional for approximately 40 years, you answer. Certain components will require replacement during that period, valve mechanisms perhaps every 10 to 15 years, some pipe sections as needed, filtration materials refreshed every 5 years. But the core infrastructure, the main tanks and primary channels, should last centuries. Centuries, the prince repeats thoughtfully. Longer than most buildings, longer than most empires. Water systems outlast the civilizations that build them, Your Highness. That's why the engineering must be perfect. Ashoka closes his tablet and looks at you directly. Your system is excellent. Your understanding of hydraulics is clearly advanced. Your honesty about limitations and possibilities is refreshing. He pauses. The Emperor is planning infrastructure development throughout the southern provinces. Large-scale water projects, public bathing facilities, irrigation expansion, urban water supply. This requires engineers of your caliber. I want you to come to Pataliputra, to the Imperial Engineering Academy, to train others and to lead projects. The offer stuns you silent. Imperial service, the capital city, major projects affecting millions of people. It's everything an engineer could want. It's also terrifying. You've spent 7 years at this temple. You know every pipe, every valve, every calculation. Leaving means abandoning this system to someone else's care, trusting that your work will be maintained properly without you. Agnimitra speaks before you can respond. Your Highness, Devadatta has obligations to the temple. He trained here, advanced here. He owes service. I'm not requesting permission. That night, you sit alone in your chamber, unable to sleep despite exhaustion. 3 days to decide. Imperial service versus temple loyalty. Vast projects versus known responsibilities. The capital city's sophistication versus this temple's familiar rhythms. Every argument has a counter-argument. Every benefit has a cost. Rudra finds you before dawn, as you knew he would. He sits without speaking for several minutes, both of you watching the grey light slowly brighten. Finally, you're going to accept. I haven't decided, you protest. Yes, you have. You decided the moment he mentioned large-scale projects affecting millions. That's what engineers live for, isn't it? Bigger problems, greater impact. You've been ready to leave for 2 years. You just didn't know it until yesterday. His words sting because they're true. You love this temple system, but you've also maintained it for 7 years. There are no major innovations left to implement here. The system is essentially complete, requiring only routine maintenance. The expansion to the village will never happen under Agnimitra's leadership. You've reached the limit of what you can accomplish in this place. What about the system? You ask. Who maintains it after I leave? Megha, Rudra says immediately. She's ready. Or she will be in a month, if you spend that time teaching her everything you know. She has better instincts than you did at her age. She'll be an excellent Jalayantrika. You consider this. Megha is only 15, but she's been effectively apprenticing for 5 years. Her mathematical skills are solid. Her hands are skilled. Her understanding of water behavior is intuitive. With intensive training, she could take over maintenance responsibilities, with Rudra providing experienced support for major decisions. The Temple Council will never approve a female chief engineer, you point out. They will if the alternative is no qualified engineer at all, Rudra counters. And if the prince mentions in his report that Megha showed exceptional competence during his inspection tour, which he will if you ask him to. You look at your old friend and realize he's been thinking about this all night, working through the same calculations, reaching the same... You spend the next 3 days training Megha with an intensity that surprises even her. Every calculation you know, every trick of pipe repair, every diagnostic technique, every decision-making framework. You take her through the entire system, explaining not just what exists, but why it exists, the reasoning behind every design choice, the alternatives you rejected and why. She absorbs everything like parched earth absorbs rain. You realize Rudra was right. She's been ready for advanced training for a while, held back only by your assumption that 15 was too young for chief engineer responsibilities. But age is just a number. Competence is what matters. By the third day, she's solving problems independently, making decisions you'd have made, showing judgment that goes beyond rote knowledge. On the evening of the third day, you approach Agnimitra with your decision. He's expecting it. You can tell by his resigned expression. "You're leaving," he states flatly. "Yes, Holy One, but I'm recommending Megha as my successor. She's qualified. With Rudra's support, she can maintain the system perfectly. She's 15 and female. She's competent. And the alternative is hiring an unknown engineer from another temple, someone who doesn't know this system, someone who might make catastrophic mistakes during the learning period." You pause. The prince was impressed with her technical knowledge during his inspection. He mentioned her specifically in his written report. That last part is a stretch. Ashoka did notice Megha's work, but you haven't seen his actual report. Still, the implication is clear. Rejecting Megha might appear in an unfavorable light if imperial officials review temple management decisions. Agnimitra is many things, but politically foolish isn't one of them. "I'll consult the council," he says, which means yes with extra steps. "When do you leave?" 1 week. I want to ensure Megha is fully prepared. The week passes in a blur of final training, packing your few possessions and saying goodbyes to the crew. Rudra clasps your arm in farewell, no words needed. Soma and Kirti present you with a small bronze measuring rod, beautifully. The journey to Pataliputra takes 12 days. You travel with an imperial convoy, which makes the trip safer but slower, stopping at way stations and provincial capitals along the route. You've never traveled this far from the temple before, and the sheer scale of the empire astonishes you. Thousands of villages, dozens of cities, millions of people, all requiring water, sanitation, infrastructure. The capital itself, when you finally arrive, makes the temple complex look like a child's toy. Pataliputra sprawls along the Ganges River for miles, a city of perhaps 500,000 people, protected by massive wooden palisade walls and organized in districts according to trade and caste. The imperial palace dominates the center, a structure of carved wood and stone that could contain the temple 10 times over. You're assigned quarters in the engineering district, a section of the city dedicated to craftsmen, architects, and technical professionals. Your room is small but comfortable, with a window overlooking a busy street where you can watch life flow past. Merchants, soldiers, priests, laborers, all moving with urban purpose you've never experienced. The temple was quiet, contemplative. This is constant noise, constant activity, overwhelming in its intensity. The Imperial Engineering Academy occupies a large compound near the palace. You report there the morning after arrival and meet the director, a man named Shukra, who's perhaps 50, with the bearing of someone accustomed to organizing complex projects. He's blunt. "Prince Ashoka says you're brilliant with hydraulics, but provincial in outlook. My job is to expand your perspective while utilizing your expertise. You'll attend lectures on mathematics, architecture, and civil administration. You'll review other engineers' projects and provide technical assessment. And you'll design a major water system for the new district being developed north of the city."
He hands you a scroll. Project specifications. 3,000 new residents. Commercial district including several workshops requiring water. Budget, 40,000 silver coins. Timeline, 18 months from design approval to completion. Questions? You have approximately 1,000 questions, but you start with
6 days is absurdly inadequate for designing a major urban water system, but you quickly realize that's the point. The timeline isn't about actual design completion. It's about seeing how you think under pressure, what you prioritize, what assumptions you make. Shukra is testing your judgment, not your drafting skills. You approach the problem systematically. First day, site survey. You spend 12 hours walking the development district, measuring elevations, examining soil conditions, locating the nearest water sources, and calculating distances. The district sits on relatively flat terrain, about 15 feet above the Ganges flood level, which is good for drainage, but means water must be lifted from the river through mechanical means. That's expensive, but manageable. Second day, demand calculation. 3,000 residents means approximately 600 families. Each family requires minimum 20 gallons daily for drinking, cooking, and basic sanitation. Commercial workshops add variable demand depending on type. Textile workshops need substantial water for dyeing and washing. Metalworking shops need less. You calculate total daily demand at approximately 15,000 gallons, with peak demand occurring during morning and evening hours. Third day, source analysis. The Ganges can obviously supply unlimited water, but river water requires extensive filtration and treatment. You consider alternatives, groundwater wells, rainwater collection, even connection to existing city water systems. Each option has different costs, maintenance requirements, and reliability factors. You spend hours calculating trade-offs. Fourth day, system design. Based on your calculations, you design a hybrid system. Primary supply from Ganges with mechanical lifting wheels powered by oxen. Secondary supply from strategically located wells for drought resilience. Storage tanks providing 2 days reserve capacity. Distribution network using lessons learned from the temple system, but scaled appropriately for urban density. Fifth day, calculation verification. You check every number, every assumption, every potential failure point. You identify weaknesses and design mitigation strategies. You calculate maintenance requirements and life cycle costs. Sixth day, preparing the presentation. You create drawings, write explanatory notes, organize calculations logically. By evening, you have a preliminary design that's not complete. The design review meeting includes Shukra, 2 senior imperial engineers you haven't met, a provincial administrator who controls the budget, and Prince Ashoka himself, who apparently attends major project reviews when his schedule permits. You present your design for 90 minutes, fielding questions, defending calculations, explaining design choices. The senior engineers are skeptical of your mechanical lifting wheels. That's a maintenance nightmare, one argues. Oxen get sick, equipment breaks, and suddenly 3,000 people have no water, which is why the system includes well-based backup supply and 2 days storage capacity, you counter. The lifting wheels provide high-volume supply during normal operations. The backup systems ensure continuous service during primary system maintenance or failure. The cost seems high, the administrator objects. 40,000 silver coins is our entire district development budget. Water infrastructure is never cheap, you reply, but consider life cycle costs. This system, properly maintained, will serve not just the initial 3,000 residents, but expansion to 5,000 over the next decade. The per-person cost over 20 years is approximately 1/3 the cost of alternative systems that require complete replacement. The discussion continues for another hour. Technical and financial considerations debated thoroughly. Finally, Shukra calls for decision. The design is sound. The costings are reasonable. I recommend approval with minor modifications to the storage tank specifications. Ashoka, who's been silent throughout, speaks. Approved. Devadatta, you'll supervise construction personally. Budget as proposed. Timeline, 18 months. Failure is not acceptable. He pauses. Also, excellent work. Your temple experience translates well to urban scale. I want you leading the hydraulics section of the academy starting next month. You're dismissed. As you leave the meeting room, one of the senior engineers catches up with you. That was impressive for someone who's been in the capital less than 2 weeks. Don't let it go to your head. Design is easy. Construction is where projects fail. He's right, of course. You've just committed to building the largest water system of your career in an unfamiliar city with an untested construction crew under timeline and budget pressure. Design was the easy part. Construction begins 3 weeks later, after securing materials, hiring crew, and completing detailed site preparation. Your crew is much larger than the temple team. 40 permanent workers, including diggers, masons, pipe fabricators, carpenters for support structures, and 6 other engineers handling different specialities. You're in charge of overall design and hydraulic systems, but you're also learning to delegate, to trust other specialists, to coordinate multiple simultaneous work sites. The mechanical lifting system is your biggest concern and your most innovative contribution. You design a series of wooden wheels, each 12 feet in diameter, fitted with bucket chains that lift water from the river as oxen walk in circles, turning gears connected to the wheels. It's not a new concept, but your refinements make it more efficient. Carefully shaped buckets that minimize spillage, gear ratios optimized for oxen's natural walking speed, counterweight systems that reduce power requirements. The first wheel is completed on schedule, a beautiful piece of engineering, built by craftsmen who know their trade. You supervise installation on the riverbank, ensuring proper foundation, correct gear alignment, perfect balance. When the first test begins, with 2 oxen harnessed to the drive mechanism, you hold your breath. The oxen walk, the gears turn, the wheel rotates, the buckets descend empty into the river, rise full, dump into the collection trough at the top, descend empty again. The cycle is continuous, graceful, effective. Water flows into the system at approximately 50 gallons per minute, which matches your calculations exactly. But 3 days later, the first problem emerges. The wooden gears begin wearing down faster than predicted, creating noise and reducing efficiency. You examine the wear patterns and realize your mistake. You calculated load based on average operation, but didn't adequately account for startup stress when the system goes from stopped to moving. The initial torque is higher than running torque, and the gear teeth can't handle it. The solution requires redesigning the gear teeth shape, adding reinforcement, and installing a clutch mechanism that allows gradual engagement. It takes a week to implement, but the second-generation design works perfectly. More importantly, you learn a crucial lesson. Calculations on wax tablets can't predict every real-world variable. Engineering requires observing actual performance and adapting. 6 months into construction, you face a crisis that makes gear wear look trivial. During excavation for the main distribution pipe trench, workers uncover an existing water channel you didn't know existed. An old system from previous development that someone forgot to map. The old channel is still carrying water, apparently serving some existing buildings that weren't included in your survey. Your new pipe trench intersects directly with this old channel, and you can't proceed without dealing with it. This requires political navigation you've never attempted. The buildings served by the old channel belong to wealthy merchants who have no interest in disruption. The provincial administration wants your project completed on schedule. The merchants want guaranteed continued water service. You're caught between competing demands with no clear engineering solution, because this is a people problem, not a technical problem. You spend 3 days negotiating, meeting with the merchants, explaining the situation, proposing solutions, meeting with the provincial administrator, requesting timeline extension and additional budget for rerouting work, meeting with your crew, determining the fastest way to maintain service while completing new construction.
It's exhausting in ways that physical labor never is. The eventual solution requires compromise. You reroute your main distribution line slightly, adding approximately 300 feet of additional pipe and 2 weeks to the schedule. You connect the old channel to your new system at a junction point, ensuring the merchants maintain service while eventually transitioning to the superior new system. It costs 500 additional silver coins and frays your nerves, but it works. What frustrates you isn't the technical challenge, which is straightforward, or even the cost overrun, which the administrator accepts as reasonable given the unforeseen circumstances. What frustrates you is that the problem existed only because of inadequate record-keeping, incomplete surveys, and institutional failure to maintain infrastructure documentation. You vow that every system you build will be exhaustively documented, with maps, specifications, and maintenance records that future engineers can actually use. This crisis teaches you that engineering isn't just technical work. It's documentation, communication, negotiation, and planning for people who'll work on your systems long after you're gone. The calculations matter, but so does everything around the calculations. The crisis with the old channel delays the project by 3 weeks total, but you make up time by optimizing other construction sequences. By month 8, you're back on schedule. The main distribution network is 70% complete. The storage tanks are finished and holding water perfectly. The mechanical lifting system is operating reliably, requiring only routine maintenance. The project is actually working. You're gaining reputation in the capital's engineering community. Other projects' designers consult with you on hydraulic calculations. The academy assigns you 2 junior engineers as apprentices, young men fresh from provincial temples who need urban project experience. Teaching them reminds you of working with Mega, and you wonder how she's doing at the temple. You write occasionally, receiving brief responses reporting that all systems continue operating properly under her management. Prince Ashoka visits the construction site on a surprise inspection. He's pleased with the progress, particularly impressed by the mechanical lifting system. This design could be replicated at 50 locations along the river, he observes, providing clean water to hundreds of thousands of people. It could, Your Highness, you agree, though each site requires customization for local conditions. Bank height, soil stability, available labor, maintenance resources. The fundamental design is sound, but implementation needs local expertise, which requires training more engineers like you, Ashoka says. I'm authorizing expansion of the academy. You'll lead the hydraulics program. 20 new students per year, 3-year curriculum, practical project experience required. You'll design the curriculum. Another massive responsibility. You're 25 years old, running a major construction project, and now expected to design an entire educational program. It should be overwhelming, but instead you feel energized. This is impact at scale. This is engineering affecting hundreds of thousands of lives. This is what you left the temple to achieve. I accept, Your Highness. When do I begin? After your current project completes successfully. First finish what you started, then we expand your responsibilities. Month 14 brings the rains. Monsoon season transforms the Ganges from a manageable river into a raging torrent, and your riverside lifting system faces its first severe test. You've designed for this, calculating flood levels based on historical records, positioning the wheels high enough to avoid submersion, building drainage channels to handle overflow. But calculations and reality sometimes diverge. The first major storm hits at night. You're awakened by a messenger reporting that the river level has risen 8 feet in 4 hours and is still climbing.
You run through dark streets to the construction site, arriving soaked and breathless. The scene is chaos. Muddy water lapping at the wheel foundations, workers struggling to secure equipment, your site supervisor shouting orders that are barely audible over wind and rain. The wheels are holding, but barely. Water hasn't reached the gear mechanisms yet, but another 2 feet and the entire lifting system could be destroyed, setting the project back months and devastating your professional reputation. You have perhaps 3 hours to take action. You make rapid decisions. First, divert water away from the wheel foundations by opening emergency spillways you'd built specifically for flood management but never used. Second, build temporary earthen barriers around the gear houses, buying time even if the foundations flood. Third, shut down the lifting system entirely to prevent damage to gears if water does reach them. Fourth, deploy all available workers to constant monitoring and barrier maintenance through the night. You work alongside your crew, hauling earth, stacking sandbags, constantly checking water levels. Rudra would appreciate the irony. You left temple maintenance to design major systems, but you're still getting muddy in a pit during an emergency. The physical work is familiar, comforting even. This you know how to do. By dawn, the rain lessens and the river begins receding. Your emergency measures held. The wheels are intact, the gears protected, and the foundations slightly damaged but repairable. You lost 1 night of sleep and gained bruises, exhaustion, and the certain knowledge that your flood calculations were adequate but not generous. Future designs will include larger safety margins. The monsoon season continues for 6 weeks, bringing 2 more flood events, though neither as severe as the first. By the time the rains end, you've learned more about flood management than any academy lecture could teach. You document every lesson, every error, every successful response. Your project report will include a detailed section on monsoon considerations that future engineers can reference. Month 16 arrives, and the project is 90% complete. The distribution network is fully functional. The storage tanks are proven reliable. The lifting system operates continuously, with only routine maintenance. Buildings are connecting to the water supply, and residents are moving into the new district. The transformation from muddy construction site to functioning urban neighborhood is remarkable. You conduct final inspections with obsessive attention to detail. Every pipe joint checked, every valve tested, every elevation verified against calculations. You find minor issues, all correctable. A valve that needs lubrication, a pipe support that requires reinforcement, a storage tank outlet positioned slightly lower than optimal. Nothing critical, but you correct everything. Perfect is possible if you demand it. The formal completion ceremony is scheduled for month 18, with Prince Ashoka conducting the official inspection and authorization. The intervening weeks are spent on finishing touches, training local maintenance workers, documenting the entire system for future reference, creating a maintenance schedule, establishing supply chains for repair materials. Engineering doesn't end when construction finishes. It continues through operation and maintenance. You create a comprehensive system manual, 50 pages of detailed drawings, calculations, maintenance procedures, troubleshooting guides, and operational instructions. It's unprecedented documentation for a water project. Most systems get a basic map and some rough notes. Your manual covers everything, written clearly enough that someone with minimal training can understand it. You remember the frustration of discovering that unmarked old channel and refuse to inflict similar problems on future engineers. Megha would be proud of the documentation. You write to her, describing the project completion and the manual you've created. Her response arrives 3 weeks later. The temple system continues operating flawlessly. Agnimitra has officially appointed her as chief engineer despite council resistance, and she's training 2 new apprentices using methods you taught her. Your legacy continues in multiple places now.
The formal completion ceremony exceeds your expectations.
Prince Ashoka arrives with full entourage, including his father, Emperor Bindusara himself, who rarely attends provincial infrastructure events. The emperor's presence signals that this project has significance beyond one neighborhood's water supply. It represents imperial commitment to public infrastructure and urban development. You conduct the demonstration tour for the emperor and assembled officials. Starting at the mechanical lifting wheels, you explain the system's capacity and efficiency. Moving to the storage tanks, you describe the reserve capacity and filtration processes. Walking through the distribution network, you show how water reaches every building with adequate pressure. The tour concludes at a ceremonial fountain you added specifically for this event, a smaller version of the temple lotus fountain, water spraying gracefully upward in demonstration of system performance. Emperor Bindusara is a stern man in his 60s, not given to easy praise. But when the tour concludes, he addresses you directly. This represents the future of imperial infrastructure. Clean water for all citizens, not just the wealthy. Reliable systems that will outlast us all. You've done exceptional work, Devadatta. The emperor's praise feels surreal. You bow deeply, maintaining proper respect, but inside you're overwhelmed. 7 years ago, you were a provincial temple engineer, maintaining a single complex. Now you're receiving imperial recognition for work that serves thousands and will influence millions through replication and training.
But the ceremony also brings unexpected news.
After the public celebration ends, Ashoka pulls you aside with serious expression. The emperor is planning expansion into the Kalinga territories to the east. This will require massive infrastructure development, roads, water systems, fortifications. It will also likely require military force. Kalinga won't submit to imperial authority peacefully. You understand immediately. War is coming, and engineers will be needed not just for water systems, but for siege equipment, fortifications, supply chains. Your hydraulic expertise translates directly to military applications. Pumping water for armies, building moats and water barriers, managing siege works. The pleasant world of civilian infrastructure is about to collide with the brutal reality of imperial conquest. The Kalinga campaign begins 6 months later. You're conscripted as senior hydraulic engineer for the expeditionary force, commanding a technical unit of 12 engineers and 40 laborers. Your civilian life of infrastructure development is suspended. Now you serve military objectives, ensuring army water supplies, building temporary siege works, managing logistics for a force of 50,000 soldiers moving through unfamiliar territory. The reality of military engineering is harsh and immediate. No 18-month design process. No careful calculation of 50-year life cycles. Instead, dig this well tomorrow, build that channel by sunset. Ensure 20,000 gallons daily for this division, no matter what. Speed and functionality override elegance and permanence. It's frustrating and also clarifying. You realize how much civilian engineering is luxury, time to do things properly. Military engineering is brutal improvisation under time pressure. Your unit's first major assignment is establishing water supply for the siege camp outside Kalinga's capital city. The camp must support 40,000 soldiers for potentially months-long siege. The nearby river provides water source, but it's contaminated by upstream use and requires extensive treatment. You design a rapid filtration system using gravel and sand layers, similar to temple systems but built in days rather than months, adequate rather than perfect.
The work is backbreaking. Digging channels in rocky soil, moving tons of filter material, building temporary storage tanks from clay and bamboo that will last months rather than decades. Your crew works from dawn to dusk, often through night when urgency demands.
You lose weight, gain scars, and develop a cough from constant dust exposure. This is engineering stripped to its essentials, making water flow where it's needed, keeping people alive. But you also witness the siege's brutality. The city won't surrender, so imperial forces prepare assault. You're ordered to design systems for undermining walls, tunnels that will be flooded to collapse foundations, channels to divert cities' water supply and force thirst surrender. These are weapon designs, not infrastructure. You're using hydraulic knowledge to destroy rather than build, to kill rather than sustain life. The siege lasts 4 months. Your water systems keep the army supplied, but the constant proximity to violence changes you. You watch soldiers die from disease when contaminated water reaches the camp, despite your filtration efforts. You see wounded men return from assaults, broken bodies that your engineering indirectly enabled by keeping the siege sustainable. You design the flooding system that collapses a section of city wall, killing dozens of defenders when the stones tumble. Prince Ashoka commands a division personally, and you see him struggling with similar moral weight. He's a skilled military commander, but the brutality visibly affects him. After one particularly bloody assault, he finds you supervising well excavation and sits silently for long minutes before speaking. How many people has your water system kept alive? In the capital district? At the temple? Here? Thousands, Your Highness. Perhaps tens of thousands over time. And how many died because your siege engineering worked? I don't know, Your Highness. Neither do I. But it's more than 0. He pauses. When this is over, I want to build hospitals, rest houses for travelers, water systems for every city in the empire. I want my legacy to be life, not death. Will you help me? Of course, Your Highness. The city finally surrenders, not from military defeat but from exhaustion and starvation. The human cost is staggering. Thousands dead, city partially destroyed, population devastated. The victory is hollow. The empire gains territory, but loses something harder to measure. You see it in soldiers' faces, in Ashoka's withdrawal into silence, in your own dreams that now include falling walls and drowning tunnels. The return to Pataliputra takes 6 weeks. The journey is somber, the army's mood dark despite victory. You spend the travel time documenting technical details of military engineering, because that's what engineers do. Record and analyze, even when the work sickens you. Your manual includes siege water systems. Back in the capital, you struggle to readjust to civilian life. The academy wants you to resume teaching. The administration has 3 new water projects awaiting your designs. But you can't focus on fountains and bathing tanks while siege images intrude on your thoughts. You develop insomnia, unable to sleep without seeing falling walls. The cough from campaign dust becomes chronic. You're functioning, but damaged. Ashoka, now deeply affected by the Kalinga campaign's brutality, begins a personal transformation. He adopts Buddhist principles of non-violence and compassion. He redirects imperial resources from military expansion to public welfare, hospitals, rest houses, animal welfare, infrastructure serving people rather than conquest. And he asks you to lead the infrastructure initiative. Build water systems for every major city, he directs. Not just capitals and wealthy districts, but everywhere. Clean water for all citizens, regardless of status. Use everything you learned, civilian and military, but direct it toward life. This is how we balance the death we caused. It's an impossible mandate, and also exactly what you need. You throw yourself into the work with desperate intensity, designing systems faster than they can be constructed, training engineers at triple the planned rate, standardizing designs for rapid deployment. You're running from nightmares and toward redemption simultaneously. Over the next 3 years, you design water systems for 18 cities. You train 73 engineers in advanced hydraulics. You write comprehensive technical manuals distributed throughout the empire. You establish standards for filtration, storage, and distribution that become imperial policy. The work is exhausting and consuming and necessary. It doesn't erase the siege memories, but it balances them with equal weight of construction and service. Your health suffers from the pace. The chronic cough worsens. You develop joint pain from old campaign injuries that weren't properly treated. At 29, you feel 50, but the work continues because millions of people need clean water and you know how to provide it.
In your 30th year, your body forces a reckoning. The chronic cough becomes severe enough that you're coughing blood. The joint pain makes climbing maintenance stairs difficult. A physician examines you and delivers blunt assessment. You're working yourself to death. Slow down or die young. Those are your options. Ashoka, now emperor after his father's death, summons you for private audience. He's changed dramatically from the warrior prince you first met. He's calmer, more contemplative, genuinely committed to Buddhist principles of compassion and right action. He looks at you with concern. You're destroying yourself trying to balance karma from Kalinga. But karma doesn't work that way. You can't undo death by overworking yourself into an early grave. Then what do I do, Your Majesty? The work is endless. Cities need water. People are dying from contaminated supply. You train others to do the work you can't do alone. You've already trained 73 engineers. Make it 773. Build an institution that outlasts you. Your personal labor matters less than the system you create for future generations. The wisdom penetrates your exhaustion. You've been thinking like a young engineer who must personally solve every problem. But you're not young anymore, and the problems are larger than any individual. The solution isn't working harder, it's working smarter, creating institutions and systems that continue without you. You begin restructuring the Imperial Engineering Program. Instead of training individual engineers, you create a comprehensive educational system. Standardized curriculum, multiple instructors, practical project requirements, graduated certification levels. Instead of personally designing every water system, you create modular design templates that provincial engineers can adapt to local conditions. Instead of maintaining direct oversight of all projects, you establish inspection and quality control procedures that ensure standards without your presence. The transition is difficult. Letting go of personal control over designs feels wrong initially. But you realize this is the final evolution from individual craftsman to systemic administrator. Your value isn't in your hands anymore. It's in your knowledge transferred to others. Your systems that continue without you. The next 5 years pass in institutional building rather than personal construction. You design the Imperial College of Hydraulic Engineering, a permanent institution dedicated to water systems education. The college occupies a new compound near the palace, with lecture halls, design studios, model demonstration systems, and residential quarters for students. You recruit 15 senior instructors, each specializing in different aspects of water engineering: filtration, storage, distribution, maintenance, mathematics, materials science. The curriculum you design is comprehensive. 3 years of intensive study combining theoretical knowledge and practical experience. First year focuses on fundamentals: mathematics,
hydraulic principles, materials properties, basic design. Second year emphasizes application. Students design systems under supervision, work on real projects, learn from failures. Third year is apprenticeship. Students join active construction projects, working under experienced engineers, taking increasing responsibility until graduation. You also establish the Imperial Engineering Standards Board, developing detailed specifications for pipes, valves, storage tanks, filtration systems, and all water system components. These standards ensure quality regardless of which engineer designs a system or which craftsman builds it. A valve made in the eastern provinces will be interchangeable with one made in the west, because both follow the same specifications. Your health gradually improves with reduced pace. The cough lessens when you stop working through nights. The joint pain becomes manageable when you rest adequately. At 35, you still look older than your years, but you're functioning better, sleeping peacefully most nights, and finding satisfaction in systemic impact rather than personal achievement. A letter arrives from Mega, now 24 and thriving as Chief Temple Engineer. She's expanded the system to serve the village you'd proposed serving years ago, finding funding through private merchants after the Temple Council continued refusing. She's training 5 apprentices and has earned respect, even from priests who initially opposed her appointment. Your legacy continues through her, multiplied and adapted, exactly as it should. Emperor Ashoka summons you for annual infrastructure review. These meetings have become ritual, combining policy discussion with personal friendship. The emperor in his 40s is calm, wise, genuinely devoted to public welfare. He's erected pillars throughout the empire, inscribing his edicts: non-violence, compassion, tolerance, public welfare. Water systems feature prominently in his policy priorities. The college has graduated its first class, Ashoka notes. 43 certified engineers dispersing to provincial assignments. Your students. How does it feel? Terrifying, Your Majesty. 43 individuals now designing systems that could serve millions. If I taught them wrong, you taught them properly. I've reviewed their graduation projects. The work is excellent, sometimes superior to your own early designs. They have advantages I lacked: systematic education, standardized knowledge, comprehensive resources. I learned by trial and error. They learn from accumulated wisdom. That's your gift to the future. Accumulated wisdom systematically transferred. Far more valuable than any single water system you built personally. The Emperor pauses. I'm establishing a new position. Imperial Chief Engineer, overseeing all public infrastructure throughout the empire. Roads, water systems, irrigation, public buildings, everything. I want you to accept the appointment. It's the highest technical position possible, combining enormous authority with overwhelming responsibility. Every major infrastructure decision in the empire would cross your desk. Every provincial project would require your approval. It's professional culmination, and also potential trap, returning you to overwork and stress that nearly killed you. Your Majesty, I'm honored, but I must decline. That position requires someone younger, healthier, able to travel constantly and work long hours. I'm none of those things anymore. Appoint someone from my first graduating class. Someone I trained, who understands the systems but has energy I lack. Ashoka smiles. I hoped you'd say that. It shows wisdom. Who do you recommend? You think Counts' appointment as Imperial Chief Engineer proves your judgment sound. Over the next 3 years, he expands water system development to 70 cities, integrates irrigation planning with urban water supply, and establishes maintenance protocols that ensure system longevity. He consults you occasionally, but increasingly, he makes independent decisions, exactly as he should. The institution functions without depending on your presence. You're 40 now, semi-retired from active practice, focusing on teaching advanced design classes at the college and writing comprehensive technical manuals. Your magnum opus is a 12-volume work titled Principles of Hydraulic Engineering, covering everything from basic mathematics through complex system design, from materials science through maintenance planning, from historical precedents through future possibilities. It's the accumulated knowledge of 23 years of practice, distilled into accessible form. The writing is interrupted by news from the temple. Agnimitra has died, peacefully in sleep at 78. The message comes from Mega, who writes that his last words included gratitude for your years of service and pride in your accomplishments. The news affects you deeply. Agnimitra gave you your first opportunity, trusted you with major responsibility at 17, supported you through failures and successes. His death severs your last connection to the young man you were. You make the long journey back to the temple for funeral rites. The trip takes 14 days now that you travel slowly, your body unable to handle the pace you maintained in youth. Arriving at the temple complex feels surreal. Everything is simultaneously familiar and changed. The water system operates flawlessly, exactly as you designed it, but with improvements Mega has added. Upgraded valves, additional distribution points, enhanced filtration. She's made it better, which is exactly what the next generation should do. Mega herself is now a confident woman of 29, respected chief engineer with her own apprentices. She greets you with professional respect, tinged with affection. The system is performing well. She reports formally, then smiles. You taught me everything that matters. Not just. You spend a week at the temple, the longest rest you've taken in years. Walking the maintenance corridors you once knew intimately, now requiring Mega's guidance because she's modified layouts for improved access. Examining the storage tank that was your masterwork, now improved with her refinements. Watching her teach apprentices using methods you taught her, adapted and enhanced by her own experience. One evening, sitting by the fountain you repaired 17 years ago, you have a profound realization. This system will outlast you. The temple system, the capital district system, the 70 cities Kautsa is developing, the hundreds more that future engineers will build using your methods and manuals. All of these will function long after you're gone, serving people you'll never meet. Maintained by engineers you'll never teach, adapted and improved by generations you'll never know. This is immortality, not in personal fame, but in accumulated contribution. The water flowing through these pipes will still flow in 100 years, 200, perhaps longer. Children not yet born will drink clean water because of systems you designed. Engineers not yet trained will solve problems using principles you documented. The institution you built will continue evolving and improving, exactly as it should. The realization brings peace you haven't felt since before Kalinga. The siege guilt that drove you to near self-destruction loosens its grip. You can't undo the deaths you contributed to, but you've balanced them with systems supporting life on much larger scale. Thousands dead in Kalinga, millions served by water systems built in the aftermath. The mathematics aren't simple moral accounting, but they mean something. On your last evening at the temple, Mega asks a question that's clearly been building. Do you regret leaving? 17 years ago you had the choice. Stay here or accept the prince's offer. Knowing everything that followed, would you make the same decision? You consider carefully before answering. I regret the war. I regret that engineering knowledge I gained can be used for destruction, but I don't regret the choice. If I'd stayed, I'd have maintained one excellent system serving hundreds. By leaving, I've contributed to systems serving millions and taught hundreds of engineers who'll teach. Returning to the capital, you complete the final volumes of your technical manual. The work takes 2 years, but when finished, it's comprehensive. Every principle you understand, every technique you've developed, every lesson learned from successes and failures. You have copies made and distributed to every provincial engineering office, every academy, every temple with technical training programs. Knowledge preserved and shared widely is knowledge that survives individual death. Emperor Ashoka reads the complete work and summons you for discussion. This is remarkable scholarship. But there's one volume missing. Your Majesty, the military engineering volume, the siege techniques, the weapon designs, all the applications for destruction. You didn't include them. No, Your Majesty. I documented them separately, in sealed records stored in the Imperial Archive. Available if genuinely needed for defense, but not distributed for easy access. I won't make it simple for future engineers to repeat Kalinga. Ashoka nods approvingly. Wise decision. Knowledge without judgment about its application is dangerous. You've learned this through painful experience. He pauses. I'm establishing a new imperial honor, the Order of Public Welfare, recognizing exceptional service to people's well-being. You're the first recipient. The ceremony is simple but meaningful. No elaborate ritual, just formal recognition before assembled court officials and academy students. Ashoka speaks. Devadatta began as a provincial temple engineer. He's ending his career as the empire's most influential technical educator, whose systems serve millions and whose students will serve millions more. This is the model of public service, not personal glory, but systemic contribution. You're 43 now, officially retired from active practice, teaching only occasional advanced seminars. Your health has stabilized, but remains fragile. The chronic cough returns during humid weather. Your joints ache in cold. You move slowly, tire easily, and sleep long hours. But your mind remains sharp, and you find satisfaction in writing, teaching, and watching the institution you built continue evolving. At 45, you face new challenge. Several students from your first graduating classes are now senior enough to be teaching at the academy, and they're questioning some of your fundamental design principles. They argue that your filtration methods are overly complex, that simpler systems would work adequately at lower cost. They challenge your emphasis on long-term durability, suggesting that more frequent replacement cycles might be economically superior. Your first reaction is defensive indignation. These are principles you developed over decades of practice, but you force yourself to listen to their arguments properly, and you realize something important. They might be right. For some applications, your designs prioritize maximum quality and longevity, because that's what temple and imperial capital systems required. But not every village water supply needs century-long durability. Sometimes adequate and affordable is better than perfect and expensive. You invite the challenging students to debate publicly at the academy. The debate is technical, rigorous, sometimes heated. You defend your principles where you believe they're genuinely necessary. You concede points where their alternatives have merit. The conclusion isn't that one approach is universally correct, but that engineers must match design philosophy to application context. Sacred temples deserve maximum durability. Provincial villages need affordable functionality. Capital cities require both quality and scale. The debate becomes legendary at the academy, not because you won or lost, but because you demonstrated that engineering knowledge evolves through challenge and adaptation. The best teacher isn't the one with all answers, but the one willing to question their own assumptions. Your students leave understanding that technical principles are tools for specific purposes, not universal laws. Emperor Ashoka, hearing about the debate, observes, "You've completed the final evolution from craftsman to teacher to sage. The craftsman knows how to build. The teacher knows how to explain. The sage knows what they don't know and remains open to learning." You're not sure about sage status, but you appreciate the recognition. Knowledge is never complete. Every answer generates new questions. Every solution reveals new problems. Engineering is endless evolution, not final perfection. That's what makes it. At 47, your body finally insists on full retirement. A severe illness during monsoon season leaves you bedridden for 2 months and permanently weakened. When you recover enough to leave bed, you can barely walk without assistance. The physician is blunt. Your body is exhausted. You've pushed it too hard for too long. What remains is rest, gentle activity, and accepting limitations. You move to a small house near the academy, close enough to attend occasional lectures, but separate from demanding daily activities. Kautzer visits regularly, updating you on major projects and consulting on difficult technical problems. Mega writes monthly from the temple. Former students visit to share their successes and challenges. You're still connected to the work, but no longer driving it. This forced stillness brings unexpected gift. Time for reflection without pressure. Days passing in reading, thinking, occasionally writing about philosophy of engineering rather than technical details. You begin composing a final short work. Letters to future engineers. Not technical instructions, but wisdom about the profession's meaning and purpose. Engineering, you write, is applied compassion. Every calculation serves human need. Every system design prioritizes well-being. Technical excellence matters not for its own sake, but because people depend on infrastructure functioning properly. The mathematics are tools for service, not ends in themselves. Remember that your work outlasts you. Build for generations beyond your lifetime. Document thoroughly so future engineers can maintain and improve. Teach generously so knowledge continues. The individual engineer is temporary. The systems we create, maintained by successors, will never meet, continue indefinitely. Balance innovation with reliability. New techniques offer advantages, but also risks. Test thoroughly before implementing at scale. Learn from failures as much as successes. Perfect is enemy of good enough, but adequate is enemy of excellence. Judge appropriately, based on context. Never lose sight of why we engineer. To improve lives, to reduce suffering, to enable human flourishing. When winter arrives in your 50th year, bringing cold that penetrates old bones and makes breathing difficult. You know with calm certainty that this is your final season. The knowledge brings no fear, only quiet acceptance. You've lived well, worked meaningfully, taught generously. Your legacy continues in functioning systems and trained engineers. Death is simply the natural conclusion. You send messages to those who matter. Mega, Kautzer, senior students, a few close friends. Not farewells exactly, but final acknowledgements of connection and gratitude. Mega arrives first, traveling from the temple despite winter conditions. She sits with you for days, talking about technical details, shared memories, the continuity of work and teaching.
The temple system is perfect, she reports. I've trained 6 engineers who've gone to other temples. Your methods are spreading throughout the region, adapted and improved. The village system serves 2,000 people now. Children who might have died from contaminated water are healthy because of infrastructure you taught me to build. That's the meaning, you tell her quietly. Not the specific systems, but the chain of knowledge transfer. I taught you. You teach others. They'll teach still others. The chain continues indefinitely. Water flows where it's needed because engineers in the future will maintain systems using principles developed now and further refined then. Emperor Ashoka visits, an unprecedented honor of the ruler coming to a common engineer's deathbed. He's old now too, in his 60s, still committed to public welfare despite age. You've served the empire extraordinarily, he says simply. Millions live better because of your work. Millions more will benefit through systems built by engineers you trained. This is immortality, not personal survival, but perpetual contribution. Your Majesty has also achieved immortality. The edicts, the policies, the commitment to compassion and public welfare. On a quiet winter morning, you slip away peacefully in your sleep, surrounded by those who love you. The funeral is attended by hundreds, engineers from throughout the empire, students from multiple graduating classes, officials representing the emperor, priests from the temple, craftsmen who built systems you designed, and even some residents of neighborhoods your water systems served. Kautsa delivers the eulogy, speaking of technical excellence and generous teaching. Mega speaks of personal mentorship and lasting legacy. Emperor Ashoka issues a posthumous decree. Every water system built throughout the empire will include a small plaque acknowledging your contribution to hydraulic engineering, knowledge, and practice. But your real memorial exists in functioning systems, temples with flowing water, cities with clean drinking supply, villages with irrigation channels, all operating because of principles you developed and engineers you trained. The water continues flowing, the knowledge continues spreading, the institution continues evolving. 3 years after your death, Mega completes a major expansion of the temple system, serving 5,000 people. She names the new main fountain Devadatta Memorial Fountain, with inscription, built using principles developed by engineer Devadatta, who understood that water systems serve not power, but people, that engineering is applied compassion, and that knowledge generously shared multiplies across generations. 20 years after your death, the Imperial College of Hydraulic Engineering has graduated 600 engineers. Your technical manuals remain standard references. Your teaching methods continue shaping education. Systems you designed personally still function perfectly, maintained by engineers who never met you, but learned from your documented wisdom. A century after your death, the temple system still operates, upgraded and improved by 7 generations of engineers, but fundamentally sound because the original design principles were correct. In a distant village, a child drinks clean water from a fountain built by an engineer trained at your college, using your methods, serving your fundamental purpose, reducing suffering, enabling life, practicing compassion through technical excellence. The water flows, the knowledge continues, the work